been postponed, and you've got to wonder why. And I've been telling you for the last several months, in fact, since this entire lawfare scenario and persecution of President Trump began, I've been telling you that every one of these cases is going to be either thrown out in lower courts or overturned in the Supreme Court. Today, big developments with the E. Jean Carroll case. You know, that kook. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you why these things are delayed. It's not just because they want to delay it for delaying's sake, or it's not because they just want another date where they're going to sentence him. It's because the entire array of lawfare is falling apart. All of that and much more today. Ladies and gentlemen, The Right Side with Doug Billings is now upon you. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hey everybody, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to do a big shout out for my great friend and one of the best in the business, Mr. Doug Billings. Right Side with Doug Billings, Right Side with Doug Billings. Doug is the future of the airwaves when it comes to independent broadcasters and podcasters. He is the new Rush Limbaugh. He's exactly what America needs right now, looking for honesty, looking for wisdom, looking for truth, looking for patriotism. Listen to Doug Billings at Right Side with Doug Billings. God bless you and God bless America, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are winning. We're winning, winning, winning. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Are you ready?
We are not liberal snowflakes who melt away in the face of tragedy, adversity, and challenge. We are a covenant nation under God, and his divine providence is not dead and it's not gone. It is living within each and every one of you. And you will bring it to life in such a way that the world has never seen before. We never back down. We never give up. We march forward.
Hey, everybody, The Right Side, Doug Billings, coming to you from smack dab in the middle of the fruited plain. And what a day. A lot of good news, a lot of hope out there, ladies and gentlemen, not just with regards to the lawfare, but other things and other polls. I'm going to get to it all today. And it's because of this show. I saw some clips out there today, and I saw some posts on social media. This show has given me the very humbling and awesome opportunity to meet some of this republic's most influential politicians, podcasters, attorneys, and so forth. And one of these attorneys who I was able to meet along the way and become friends with him, in fact, is Will Scharf. Will is one of President Trump's key attorneys, and today he gave us an update about what is going on with the lawfare surrounding President Trump, specifically about the E. Jean Carroll case and that nonsense. Like all of the other cases, this one has been arrayed against President Trump with nothing but nonsense as a foundation, nothing but kookdom surrounding it. They should never, the prosecution, the persecution, as we call it sometimes, should never have been allowed to bring this case or any of the others against President Trump. And the thing is, they're beginning to realize this now, too. Their game is up. The gig is up for the radical left liberal mob, and we're beginning to see evidence of this all throughout the lawfare and through the news drops that are coming out in the legacy media. But I'm here to tell you that this is the beginning of the end of the nonsense, and we're going to be entering into the season of accountability, my friends. There is absolutely nothing that should have been brought against him, and it wouldn't have been brought against President Trump by any other group except this radical left commu-socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party, who don't give a rat's behind about rules, the law, the Constitution, and the Republic in general. They are anti-American at their core. They are. And they have weaponized the Department of Justice, obviously, you all know this, against Donald Trump. I've told you almost since the first day that Administrator Biden and Vice Pretender Harris were given the Oval Office, I've told you that these cases arrayed against him are either going to be thrown out by a lower court or overturned by the Supreme Court. Today, I saw a clip on X, in fact. Thank you, Elon, by the way, for opening up X to free speech. I saw my friend Will Scharf. He was holding a press conference with President Trump there at his side, and he laid out, Will Scharf did, a very articulate, very reasonable, and logical explanation about not only how Trump's persecutors broke the law in presenting this nonsensical case in a United States courtroom, but how and why this particular case involving E. Jean Carroll will be overturned and thrown out. So I have a clip of my friend Will Scharf. Let's roll and play clip number 1, Reagan. Thank you.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Will Scharf. I'm one of President Trump's attorneys. Today we presented oral argument before the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in one of 2 cases brought against President Trump by E. Jean Carroll. Now, it's really important to remember that E. Jean Carroll's story at its heart is an utterly implausible he said, she said story. There is no corroboration for anything she has ever claimed about President Trump. There are no corroborating witnesses. As President Trump alluded to, there is not confirmatory DNA. No police report was filed at the time of this alleged incident. She was unable to identify when this incident occurred until quite recently. No surveillance evidence or witnesses have ever been found or come forward confirming any aspect of E. Jean Carroll's story. In light of that, in light of the utter implausibility of the story that E. Jean Carroll was attempting to sell to the jury in this case, her attorneys introduced evidence that should have never seen the inside of a courtroom. Utterly insane efforts to introduce propensity witnesses, Jessica Leeds and Natasha Stoynoff, most notably, in an unfair and improper effort to buttress E. Jean Carroll's failed attempt to assault President Trump. Jessica Leeds' story is instructive here. This is a woman who claims that in the middle of a crowded airliner in 1979, President Trump assaulted her. Leeds has never been able to identify where this plane departed from, where it went to, the date of the flight in question, making our efforts to disprove her testimony extremely difficult. Under the federal rules of evidence, this story should have never been allowed to be presented to the jury in this case. The same is true of Natasha Stoynoff's story, which again lacks any indicia of reliability, any sort of credibility, any sort of confirmatory testimony from other witnesses, or anything else that would make you believe that this actually happened. So on the one hand, you have a judge who allowed in this improper propensity evidence that should not have been allowed in. In our view, that polluted the jury's deliberations in this case. That presented a story to the jury of a series of a pattern of conduct that the jury should not have been considering. And we think that absent that propensity evidence, no fair jury could have reached the verdict that was reached in this case. And as a result, we believe that this verdict needs to be overturned. But there's more than that. In addition to this improper propensity evidence, President Trump and his trial team were prevented from cross-examining E. Jean Carroll and other witnesses on crucial issues in particular relating to political coordination and the political motivation behind this entire lawsuit. This is a lawsuit that was instigated in large part by George Conway, a longtime political foe and adversary of President Trump. This is a lawsuit that was funded by Reid Hoffman, a key political ally of the Biden-Harris administration and a major Democrat donor. We were limited in the evidence we were allowed to present at trial about these crucial facts. We were prevented from cross-examining E. Jean Carroll on aspects of that dynamic that underlies this entire lawsuit. And that, too, unfairly corrupted the jury's deliberations in this case and requires reversal of the jury verdict. I think this political coordination point is particularly important, though. It's important to emphasize because what we have seen in the last few years is a weaponization by the Biden administration and by their political allies of our legal system and of our courts to unlawfully, unconstitutionally interfere with President Trump's core First Amendment right to run for president. That is a right guaranteed to him by the Constitution. That is the right that his political opponents are attempting to strip away from him. We have seen this in case after case after case where unfair political motives have underlay what should be serious legal proceedings. And I think when you look at this situation in toto, when you look at what the left, when you look at what the Biden-Harris administration is attempting to do to President Trump, this is insane. This is an absolute abuse of our legal system. It's an absolute abuse of the rule of law. It should be deeply offensive, not just to political supporters of President Trump, but to each and every American. With respect to today's appeal, we are hopeful that the Second Circuit understands what's at stake here. We are hopeful that the Second Circuit understands what occurred during this trial, which was an improper use of evidence to buttress E. Jean Carroll's entirely meritless claims on the one hand, and an improper exclusion of evidence that would have informed the jury about the true motivation behind this lawsuit and that we believe would have resulted in a very different verdict. Thank you.
Will Scharf there, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most articulate attorneys and one of the good guys out there. You just a great, intellectually mature, passionate, and real examination of what went on there. And you heard him mention George Conway. George Conway, of course, the ex-husband of Kellyanne Conway, one of Trump's advisors. George is an abject, he embodies the radical left liberal coalition of immorality. He's an attorney. He knew that he was throwing this nonsense up against President Trump. And he knew, along with Reid Hoffman and others, that this was a case that is not based in merit. It's not based in constitutionality. It's based in Kookville. And they wanted to simply throw it at him to see how far they can get with it. This is what the radical left is all about. Weaponization of the government and especially of the Department of Justice against people who stand in their way. And oh boy, does Trump stand in their way. He will deconstruct George Conway. He will deconstruct what Conway represents, along with the radical left liberal commune socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party. And it's not going to be long, ladies and gentlemen, until the radical left liberal mob is going to have to begin to refer to President Trump as the falsely accused and now vindicated former president. You can count on that. And this is incredible news. I want to talk more about it when we come back from break. I also want to remind you about DougBillings.us, the website that we've just revamped over there, and a way that you can help me continue to bring you this program. I bring you truth like this and the state of play analysis about not only Trump's campaign, but of America and the world. And we are engaging upon a new sponsorship drive, trying to get new sponsors like you. I'm a crowd-funded program. It's just me, a one-man operation, and this website is how I fund the program. So I'm just asking that you would prayerfully consider heading over to DougBillings.us and checking that out and set up a recurring monthly donation over there. Whatever you can afford. I know Bidenomics is tough and everything is tight, but the truth is important. I never charge you for the show. So prayerfully consider what is the truth worth to you. Stay with me. I want to continue talking about this lawfare, about the breaking news, and about why and how all of these cases arrayed against President Trump are either going to be thrown out or overturned. I'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers. Yep. Yeah, we just went to break. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the set of my show. Coming to you, as I always do, from smack dab in the middle of the fruited plain. And I want to talk to you about EMP, electromagnetic pulse. Now, these things can happen from the sun in nature and naturally, but they can also happen through man-made devices made by people who don't like us very much. And thanks to Kamala Harris, our failed border czar, we've got millions of people in this country who don't like us. Thank you very much, Kamala. Well, EMP Shield is a device like this one here that hooks up to your breaker box in your home, and it prevents your home and your electrical system from being fried in case of an electromagnetic pulse. There's a smaller version that you can put on the battery of your vehicle, so it is also protected. So head over to empshield.com, promo code Doug, ladies and gentlemen, empshield.com, promo code Doug. Believe it, for the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings. Doug Billings, driving the left crazy with the truth.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today, big news about the lawfare being waged against President Trump. As I said, it's not going to be long, not going to be long at all until the radical left mob is going to have to refer to President Trump as the falsely accused and now vindicated former president. It's all turning our way, and their time, the radical left time of illegal and unconstitutional prosecution, persecution of their political opponent is ending. Their time of self-indulgence is ending. Their time of immoral judgments against an innocent man is ending. Their time of gaslighting is ending. Their liberal presidential campaign is ending. All of it coming to an end today. That's right. Harris and Walz in deep trouble within the polls, national favorability tanking for them. The sugar high is over, and all of it coinciding with new reports that President Trump is leading in every one of the battleground states in wide margins. And this is done with, look, I know that what you all think about polls is what I think about them. I take them usually with a grain of salt, but there are one or two out there who engage with sound and decent methodology and do not take polls that are heavy laden with response bias. You know, taking a poll of the blue-haired Democrat club and saying, hey, who are you going to vote for president? Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Well, the blue-haired Democrat club is going to say Kamala Harris. And that's the kind of polls the left conducts. It's the kind that the legacy media conducts. And it's very much the kind that you see radical left liberal podcasters and influencers on social media publishing. Bad methodology and response bias in these polls. So in the Dubuque Register, the Iowa Register polls that come out, they're very reputable, historically speaking. And I'm not saying that we depend on the polls. I'm just saying that this particular set of polls has a historical accuracy that is good. And so we have Trump in Michigan in these polls up 52% to Harris 48%. In Pennsylvania, Trump is 62%. Harris is 38%. In Pennsylvania, we know that Pennsylvania is in play, and you know that this is true because the radical left has been talking an awfully lot about Pennsylvania lately. Pennsylvania, Trump 62%, Harris 38%. Wisconsin, Trump 52, Harris 48. And Arizona, Trump 55, Harris 45. And all President Trump needs, keep in mind, he just needs one of those states, and the White House is his again. The tide is turning. And additionally, if we didn't see enough hope to get us going about all of this, if we didn't see a changing of the tide, if you will, let me also remind you, in this today, in these polls that I've just mentioned, there is a very accurate, historically based poll that shows President Trump has a clear pathway, a very clear pathway to an electoral college victory with a 62% chance of him prevailing. Right now, that the odds are that he will, 62%, he will prevail in the electoral college. Kamala Harris, only a 38% chance that she will prevail in the electoral college. Now, that will make liberal heads explode, and they will begin to talk about their usual mantra about how they want to again lambast and do away with the founding fathers and their Constitution, and especially the electoral college. You see, that's easy for them because they are not pro-America. They believe that America needs to be fundamentally transformed, and people like President Trump and institutions like the Electoral College stand in their way. The Electoral College will not let them fundamentally transform America. Neither will President Trump. So how does the left respond to that? Well, those two things must be eliminated. That's it. It's that simple. And the Constitution and the intent of the founding fathers, it all must be done away with because they want to fundamentally transform America. And as I've told you before, no American patriot can claim that America needs to be fundamentally transformed. You can't say that and be an American patriot. America does not need to be fundamentally transformed. Thank you very much. God inspired America. God inspired the founding fathers to write our founding documents. It is in no need of fundamental transformation. Now, as you know, on shows here last week and this week and for the last couple of months, I've been warning you about September 18th. September 18th was supposed to be the sentencing date that Judge Juan Merchan up in New York, the judge who's overseeing the Alvin Bragg Kangaroo Court, in case you're from Raytown, Missouri. All of this has changed as of today, which is interesting. It's good, and it's also very interesting because Judge Merchan is beginning to see the writing on the wall, ladies and gentlemen. The writing on the wall states, quite frankly, President Trump will be vindicated of all charges. That's the writing on the wall that the radical left is beginning to now see, and it scares the heck out of them. Judge Merchan has decided to delay the sentencing that was to take place on September 18th. He's going to delay it until after Election Day. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, if we were to look at all of this today and read between the lines of the thought process of Judge Merchan, the nonsense George Conway case that was arranged with E. Jean Carroll and how it's being dissected and thrown away, what we see is that this means everything that President Trump is facing, everything that he's facing from the Department of Justice, all of the cases against him, all of the verdicts against him, all of the cases that are still remaining to be heard, all of them, and words are important, all of them are going to be either dismissed in lower courts or they're going to be overturned in the Supreme Court. Judge Merchan up in New York, working the case that Alvin Bragg is prosecuting, is an operative of the Communist Socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party. He has been under strict orders from the radical liberal hierarchy to pursue this nonsensical case all the way through to the sentencing date to include jail time for President Trump. Those were the marching orders that Judge Merchan was given. And up until today, we had every reason to believe that Trump was going to be put in jail. Why would the radical left stop their pursuit of that goal? They would not, unless something else has now prevented them. And I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to give you the analysis about what's going on, again, as I said, between the lines here. The development has now taken place. We see a new sentencing date. All right. It's November 26th, by the way. November 26th, which means between the lines, the case is falling apart. When you were listening to the clip that we played from Will Scharf, you heard him say and list a number of things that the E. Jean Carroll case, the judge in that case, who is not Judge Merchan, that's a different judge, but Will Scharf was listing several items that were not done correctly. President Trump's legal team was not given the ability to cross-examine witnesses in that case, ladies and can you imagine? It's almost as if the judge was trying to screw up so badly that it would be overturned in another upper court. I mean, it really does give you that sense that it was so egregious in the errors that were committed. Jurors that were shown evidence that should not have been presented in any other normal court. No corroboration of any of the claims that Jean Carroll put forth. None. And so it is now becoming clear they see these things unraveling. They can't continue the circus any longer. The curtain has been pulled back. President Trump will likely, on November 26th, this new date now, because he would have won the presidency, he's likely not to be sentenced on that date either. And it's not just because of my hunch that he's going to win. I'll explain why, because it's in a letter that Judge Merchan wrote today to Trump's team and to the prosecutors. I told you the case will be thrown out in lower courts. I've said this time and time again over the last few months. And I think that what we're seeing today is, again, Judge Merchan reading the writing on the wall. and deciding that there is nothing here to pursue, folks. The gig is up. They don't just delay cases like this. If there was solid evidence and reasonable and intellectually mature conclusions that would indicate it would be upheld in higher courts, given the appeal process. I mean, I know that the radical left throws everything they can, and it seems as if they're not concerned with whether or not something will stick, right? And that's part of their strategy, don't get me wrong. But when they are really now faced with the nation, the republic, waking up to all of this and it being reflected in the polls, you can better believe that the radical left communist-socialist, formerly known as Democrat hierarchy, the people like Barack Obama and Susan Rice and others behind the scenes who have really been making the decisions all along on that side, are saying, all right, hang on a minute, hang on, we've got to reevaluate. America's waking up. I think they might be on to us. So it's delayed, and it will be eventually dismissed, this E. Jean Carroll case, and the one up in New York with Judge Merchan, because the radical liberal left mob knows, they know that President Trump did nothing wrong. His political martyrdom is, in fact, the reason that he's become this astronomically high shooting star in the polls. John and Jane Doe, you and me, people in the audience, people around the country are going, what in the world is going on? How dare they do this to this man? It's obvious that it's lawfare from one party against their opponent. And let's just say that his political martyrdom is mostly responsible for his rise in the polls, but it's not the only reason for his rise in the polls. The other reason is that the sugar high, this fake and this manufactured enthusiasm for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, oh my gosh, the joy and happiness couple whose policies and actions bring anything but joy and happiness. Their actions and their policies bring about anarchy, burning of cities. Tim Walz, governor, Minneapolis, burn, baby, burn. And Kamala Harris setting up funding mechanisms so that those anarchists could be bailed out of jail. The only time that they've supported law and order is to get their own criminals out back on the streets. But their sugar high and the fake manufactured enthusiasm is absolutely crashing all around them. Now, all of this lawfare evaporating up right in front of their very eyes has the entire radical left liberal mob, the campaign of Harris and Walz, it now, all of it, the entire campaign, now that all of that legal stuff is evaporating, their entire campaign, get this, rests upon the ability of Kamala Harris to speak extemporaneously and without a teleprompter. You can't get any better than that because she's the worst political public speaker in the modern era. And the debate is coming up. And so what I'm telling you is that their entire campaign hinges on this debate and her lack of ability to speak extemporaneously without a teleprompter. All right, I'm up against a break. I'm going to come back and pick right up on this. So much good news and so many good developments, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with me. I'll be right back. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that you could change the trajectory of your aging process? Look and feel better, live younger, be more active, less pain when you move around, sleep better, diminish the lines and the wrinkles on your face? Really? This is what I'm telling you. It's possible. You see, low stem cell activity happens when we get older. And it could be causing many of the health problems that some people have in the world today. Because as we get older, we have less stem cell activity, which means we age faster and we heal slower. The secret is a clinically proven and patented phototherapy non-transdermal patch, whose technology is the result of over 90 clinical studies and over 20 years of research. Your healthier life can begin today, and you can discover true age reversal. Age reversal, ladies and gentlemen. Please go to liveyoungerwithdoug.us. liveyounger.with Doug.us, ladies and gentlemen. Get over there today. Or if you'd like, text my name, Doug, to 41372. Doug, text it, 41372. And get over to liveyounger.with Doug.us. Get younger, feel younger. I'm doing it. I'm wearing this patch. I feel great, and so will you. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen. For the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Hey, consider going to mypillow.com right now and get your pet a pet bed, just like my beloved Delta has right here in my office. Not only can you get pet beds, but you can get sheets, towels, blankets, and so much more. Slippers, sandals, robes, beach towels. It just goes on and on. But please, go to mypillow.com and be sure to use the promo code B66. When you do, not only will you receive savings, but a generous percentage of each purchase comes back to continue supporting this 24/7 free broadcast outlet. We need your support. Hey, look, we're entrepreneurs, just like my friend Mike Lindell. We all need your support, and you're getting quality products at the same time. So please, go to mypillow.com and use the promo code B66. Mike always has amazing specials going right there at MyPillow. So check out whatever those specials might be today. You never know. Mike's always changing it up and making new offers right there at mypillow.com. But be sure to use the promo code B66.
Doug Billings, driving the left crazy with the truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from smack dab in the middle of the fruited plain of the United States of America, talking about the legal lawfare persecution falling apart, everything drying up, evaporating right in front of the very eyes of the radical left liberal mob, and it is wonderful, glorious to see. And Trump soaring in the polls, especially in the battleground states. Great news all around us. Now, what all of this means, the lawfare, they're not going to be able to keep Trump out of the White House. They're not going to be able to try to continue these lawfare, the weaponized DOJ. It will all be either thrown out in lower courts or overturned in the Supreme Court. And now that means that the entire campaign of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz rests upon Kamala Harris and her ability during the debate to be able to speak extemporaneously. That means without a script, in case you're from Raytown, Missouri, by the way, and without a teleprompter. Are you kidding me? She's the world's worst political speaker. She's the worst political speaker in the modern era. She didn't win any debate in 2020 when she was running for president. She got no delegate votes. She was gifted her current position. She was bequeathed her current position. And we all know that she has zero ability to speak off the cuff and in public without a teleprompter. She's terrible at it. So she is going to plummet. She's beginning that plummet today, right now. It's all crashing in around them. I want to also point out that Judge Merchan today, in this announcement that he is now delaying the sentencing that was scheduled for September 18th. He wrote a letter to President Trump's team and to the prosecuting team. And in that letter, he wrote this, and I'm going to read verbatim a couple of snippets from this letter because it's interesting. Again, what they're saying in the letter, what they're saying between the lines, and what the radical left sees, as I say, the writing on the wall, right? So here's an excerpt, a quote from the letter that Judge Merchan sent out today. He says, quote, "The sentencing on this matter, if necessary, if adjourned to November 26th, will be at 10 o'clock a.m. So the words, if necessary, my friends, very important. That's judge speak, if necessary. Well, what that means is there will not be a sentencing because the case has no merit and it's going to be thrown out. That's what the sentencing on this matter, if necessary, will be adjourned to November 26th, 2024 at 10 a.m. If necessary. Judge speak for there's not going to be a sentencing because the case has no merit. That's what he's saying, folks. Merchan also said this, and I'm going to quote directly again from the letter. Quote, The public's confidence in the integrity of our judicial system demands a sentencing hearing that is entirely focused on the verdict of the jury and the weighing of aggravating and mitigating factors free from distraction or distortion. Unfortunately, we are now at a place in time that is fraught with complexities, rendering the requirements of a sentencing hearing, should one be necessary, difficult to execute. Thus, in accordance with certain of the grounds submitted by the defendant, that's the Trump team, and the reasons for adjournment provided by the people, Alvin Bragg's team, coupled with the unique time frame that this matter currently finds itself in, the decision on the motion and the imposition of sentence will be adjourned to avoid any appearance, however unwarranted, that the proceeding has been affected by or seeks to affect the approaching presidential election in which the defendant is a candidate. Judge speak again, ladies and gentlemen. Let me translate that for you. We tried to interfere with the election, but now too many people are on to us, so we're giving up. That's what Judge Merchan is saying here, folks. And I mean, in all seriousness, really, there is no merit to any of the charges, to any of the cases, any of the convictions that have been arrayed against President Trump. No merit whatsoever in any of them. And this one in New York that Judge Merchan is overseeing is the most kooky of all of them, the most nonsensical of all of them. And remember, my friends, remember that the original sentencing was going to be on July 11th. Remember that? We heard that and we're going, what? That's just a couple of days before the Republican National Convention, remember? But Judge Merchan moved it to September 18th. And again, he only delayed it because he was, and he currently is, in conversations with the radical left Communist Socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party, about whether or not they're going to go forward with the case at all. He's under orders from them, and he's in cahoots with them. The conclusions that we can draw from this, in my opinion at least, are obvious. There is no case against President Trump. They know it. So they delay the case. They push it out just so they can have more Skype and Zoom calls to talk about it. What are we going to do? We're going to go forward. There's really nothing there. The Supreme Court's going to overturn it, if not some other higher court or lower court. They're all, it's going to be, we don't have a case. What are we going to do? That's the reason for these delays. So they can talk about it, strategize, and try to figure out what to do. Well, they're out of time. They've delayed it now beyond the election. It's not going to matter. Much of this has to do with, of course, the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity, a ruling that came down heavily in favor of not just Trump, but any president. This is not a ruling that makes the president a king. That's the radical left result of conference calls. Okay, what are we going to say here? This is what they do. They gather together every week. I'm not making this up. They gather together every week, the radical liberal hierarchy. And once they get their act together and they understand what they want to do, then they invite the media and they invite radical liberal podcasters and influencers on X and other social media platforms. And they begin to then delve out and distribute the orders, the marching orders. Okay, look, here's what we're going to do. I know that none of you like Kamala Harris. We don't either. Nobody's ever liked her. But she's the only one we've got because we've painted ourselves into this DEI corner. We can't fire her. We can't get rid of her. So here's what we're going to do. You all are going to be excited about her. I know. There's montage after montage of tapes of all of us saying that we don't like her, but we're going to ignore that. And we're going to spin her into the best thing that's been since sliced bread. And you all are going to be excited. And I demand it. We, the hierarchy, we demand it. Don't ever let up, and cascade it down and upon all of your platforms and all of your audiences. And that's what you must do. That's the orders that were given to the radical left liberal media and to the talking heads and pundits and podcasters on social media. There is nothing there with Kamala. She's an empty vessel. Zero, zilch, nada, nothing. No talent, no savvy, no passion, no policy. That's why she's a copycat. That's why she doesn't give press conferences. Nothing there. And the American people are now awake to all of this in great numbers, and not just us conservatives, but John and Jane Doe, who are on the streets of America, who again may have voted for Administrator Biden and Vice Pretender Harris, but are now going, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. Not only is there chaos and crisis that's been purposefully manifested because of their policies, they're not doing anything to help me believe that this is ever going to go away if they're back in office. They're actually saying, hey, if you elect Kamala, she's going to fix all of these crises. Well, she's already in office. So you understand, people are waking up. The radical left knows this now. And so they're stuck. And so they don't know what to do. But it's the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity has nothing to do with making a president a king or giving him powers like a monarch. No. It's for official duties, and that's what the founding fathers intended. But also remember, in no insignificant ways and matters, this is also an issue. Judge Marchant happens to have a daughter who works at a company called Authentic Campaigns, which represents top Democratic candidates throughout the Republic. In the arguments presented by Trump's legal team, it was made clear that that was a problem, a conflict of interest. Also made clear was that Alvin Bragg in this case, and remember I said that the Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity, and you heard Will Scharf say this in the clip we played at the beginning of the program. If you're just joining us, watch the tape. This is recorded. Go back and watch that clip from Will Scharf. It is masterful, absolutely masterful. But Bragg offered what's called, quote unquote, official acts as evidence up in the kangaroo court in the criminal trial. The Supreme Court said that the president can't be held responsible for official acts, but Alvin Bragg put them up as evidence. So then the Supreme Court rules official acts can't be allowed. And so that's why all of this is going on, folks. They're going, wow, the Supreme Court has ruled against, we don't have a chance. This thing is eventually going to end up, if it's upheld in lower courts, it's going to end up in the Supreme Court, and they're going to throw the whole thing out. So they're reevaluating, they're re-strategizing. That's why the delay again today announced about this sentencing date. Trump's team said that this included White House communications, the stuff that Bragg put forward, White House communication, official acts, White House staffers like Hope Hicks and Madeleine Westhouse and other people, all brought up who were part of the cabinet and Trump's team. Official acts should not have been allowed, and that's why the case is crumbling. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hey, if you want to join in on this, by the way, 901-316-8404. 901-316-8404. Be happy to open the phone lines. And if any of you want to talk about the topic here today, 901-316-8404. You think about it, get in line, call up, and I will be right back after this break. Cheers. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the set of my show, The Right Side. Hey, want to tell you about beef. Doug's Beef. DougsBeef.com. This is not your ordinary beef. This is prepper beef. If you want to have a supply of protein on hand, I'm talking ribeye, strip steaks, Kansas City and New York strip, and T-bones as well. Doug's Beef, ladies and gentlemen, check it out. Comes to you in freeze-dried packets, shelf life of 25 years. And when you cook this stuff up, I'm telling you, I wouldn't sell it if it wasn't delicious. Awesome stuff. DougsBeef.com. Head over there, take a look at all of the inventory, and stock your shelves with protein, with good tasting stuff. DougsBeef.com, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out. There's the beef. Believe it, for the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to Use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHousebG.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the set of my show, The Right Side. I am Doug Billings. Today's economy crashing thanks to the policies, platform, and politics of Kamala Harris. Thank you very much. If you want to protect your investment that you have set aside for your retirement, everyone's talking about it. Everyone's diversifying in gold and silver, the biblical standard for which we can protect our money. Head over to Doug's Gold, D-O-U-G-S gold.com, Doug'sGold.com, and simply get information about how you can diversify your portfolio and protect your retirement, ladies and gentlemen. Doug'sGold.com. Also information about how to use gold and silver as currency on Doug'sGold.com. Ladies and gentlemen, head over there today. Protect yourselves. Protect your retirement. Believe it. For the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
The Right Side with Doug Billings, pointing out the intellectual immaturity of liberals.
Hey, welcome back. It's awfully good to be with you. Thanks for joining me here on The Right Side. It's an honor to stand with you shoulder to shoulder as we try to reclaim the Republic from the grip of the coalition of immorality that is the Communist Socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party. So we're talking about the great news today. We see the lawfare beginning to evaporate in front of the radical left party. They don't know what to do. They're trying to figure it out. And before the break, we were talking about what the Supreme Court had ruled about this immunity case that came down earlier this past summer, that presidents cannot, they enjoy a lot of immunity, folks, from official acts. And Alvin Bragg, prior to that ruling from the Supreme Court, had been putting forth official acts against President Trump as evidence up in New York. So they're looking at their Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchan and the entire radical left hierarchy, all of the people making decisions back there, Barack Obama, Susan Rice, all of them. What are we going to do? Because official acts are off limits, and that's all we've presented, really, are official acts. So it's going to be tossed, this case. So they're trying to figure out how to approach it. And so that's why we're seeing the delays in the sentencing, because they do not have a case. It's all gone away. Now, they, of course, aren't going to say that out loud, and you're not going to hear it on legacy media. Of course not. But you're hearing it here because it's the truth. It's part, you know these things partly because you're around the situation so long and you can just sense it. It's part of your gut, but it's also just intellect. It's intellectual maturity. It's the ability to have common sense. And we see this, and I want to remind you again, as far as official acts go with the Supreme Court, they ruled in that case. It was the official title is Trump versus the United States, that a former president has substantial immunity from prosecution for official acts while he is in office. Now, it doesn't apply to unofficial acts, but there's a line that has to be defined there. And so the Supreme Court has said that Trump is immune from criminal prosecution for these official acts. But the Supreme Court left it to the lower court to determine exactly where that line is, the line between official and unofficial. What is it? So the court said, you figure it out and you give us your answer, and then we'll review it. And if we agree, great. If we don't, it is overturned. So that's where we are. It's going to be overturned, folks. It's going to be overturned. They don't have any. They can't. There is no evidence that Alvin Bragg has that's legitimate. None. And that's why the delay in sentencing today. Between the lines, that's what's going on. The writing on the wall is there, and Judge Merchan and Alvin Bragg are reading it. It's all part of a kaleidoscope of events that are beginning to turn towards the right side, towards the conservative movement, towards President Trump. America is turning and trending towards conservatism, towards President Trump. I mean, I've spoken about the September 18th date at great length in at least 3 or 4 shows just in the past month or so. It's been so much on my mind, and it's not been mentioned or discussed very much at all in the legacy media. So, and as I've always told you when I'm talking about that, if there was going to be a sentencing, that they would sentence Trump to jail. And I believed it all the way up to today. And of course they would. Look, if they had a case, if there was a legitimate way for them to put Trump in jail, they would do it. They would not just pull back and say, well, okay, I guess we've put him through enough. We'll stop now. That's not their mode. That's not how they work. That's not how they think. Of course they're going to put him in jail if they can. And I thought that was what they were going to do. On September 18th, had this thing not been delayed, and if there was a case, yes. But now, knowing all of what's going on now and seeing this letter that Mershon wrote today, there was never a legitimate case. I knew that. I knew it without this letter, without this decision to delay the sentence. I've always known that. And I've always been honest with you. And I've told you this. There's never been a case. I've always said that it's going to be thrown out by the Supreme Court. The radical left has to retreat now. They have to. There is no going forward with this. They know that the American people know that it's nonsense, that this lawfare is ridiculous. It's nonsensical. And so now they've got to retreat. They've got to back down because there's no case anywhere against President Trump that could withstand the scrutiny of the Supreme Court. And they don't want that embarrassment again. They don't want another loss in front of that court, in front of the American people again. So the radical left, Communist Socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party, the hierarchy realizes that if they want to proceed with such nonsense, that it would catapult President Trump into the stratosphere of political martyrdom. And as we can all see, as of today, this has boosted President Trump's stature. It's boosted his polling. It's boosted his likability. It's boosted his chances of winning the White House, way ahead of Kamala Harris now. Not only in the battleground states that I mentioned earlier, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, but in all of the battleground states, and most importantly, the Electoral College, significantly up. But that's where the liberal heads will begin to really explode, because remember, the radical liberal mob, this communist socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party, wants to eliminate the Electoral College. And they want to eliminate the Supreme Court too. That's why they're festering about all of this right now. They are on Zoom calls, Skype calls, and traditional conference calls talking about this letter, about the delay, all of this news that came down today. They're talking about Will Sharf. Look at that guy. How did he get such a good lawyer, that Trump? That Will Sharf, I don't know how we win. How are we supposed to counter Will Sharf? We can't. He's too good. They're talking about all of this. What are we going to do next? Trump will have won the election on November 5th. The sentencing date is November 26th now. So given all of this, whereas before I was certain that on September 18th they were going to sentence him to jail, but now, no, because look, you can see it between the lines and the writing on the wall. There is nothing there. Official acts was the only evidence that was put forth by Alvin Bragg, and the Supreme Court ruled that official acts cannot be used against a president. He is immune from prosecution that involves official acts. So there it is. It's out in the open. Well, you had to read between the lines, and that's why you have me, and you see the writing on the wall. Just imagine me as your secret spy decoder ring. I'm the one that's going to tell you what the writing on the wall is and what is written between the lines here, and that's it. Nothing exists. All of these things, as I have said since almost 2021, when all of the lawfare began to be waged against President Trump, I said to you, it's all nonsense. They want to eliminate their political opponent. There's nothing here. It's all going to be overturned either in a lower court or by the Supreme Court, no matter what happens to Trump. And I'm I'm right. And there it is. And all of you, not that I'm the only one out there that was saying those things, but I am the first that was saying it. And now everyone's picking up on it. And it's good news. So the polls, the Electoral College, that's going to really bother them because they want to fundamentally transform America away from things like the Supreme Court and the Electoral College. So we need to stay in the game. We don't get complacent. We don't take any of this great and good news with a sense of complacency. We hold the line. We toe the line. We continue to get involved in our local levels and work. And we vote. We always vote, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what kind of adversity, challenge, or tragedy is before us, whether it's rigged or not. We always vote. Every time. Always. And I'll say it again. I've said it many times, but it needs to be, I think, repeated. Our rights come to us from God, my friends. And we do not honor God if we don't participate in the votes the rights that he's given us. And think about this. We don't honor the military if we don't participate in the rights that they've gone to the battlefield to die for, to protect. So we know that we have election integrity issues that we still need to resolve, but we don't sit back and say, I'm not going to vote because it's a rigged system. That is a snowflake. A non-patriot says those things. No American patriot sits back and says, well, I'm not going to vote. But yet there were many people, some who were very influential in this country, were saying those very words. Fix 2020 or bust. Nonsense. We march forward. We can multitask. We can continue to engage in the present and look to the future while we also address issues that we need to resolve from the past. We don't just fold up and give in. We march forward. We persevere. We are conservatives. That's our nature. We don't give up. So stay in this, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of good news here today. Very good news. And so it sends us into the weekend on a little bit of an emotional high, but stay engaged. Your local levels continue to get involved. That's where the battle will be won. All right, my friends, look, have a great weekend. Remember, DougBillings.us. Please, before I go, let me remind you, DougBillings.us, the website, brand new developments over there. Check out the donate tab. I am a one-man shop, and I'm seeking new sponsors for the program, a sponsorship drive. DougBillings.us. There's a donate tab over there. Just please prayerfully consider a monthly recurring donation. It's how I produce the show and keep it available to you free of charge. Yes, it's how I make a living. It's how I sustain myself and my son Michael and Grant, and we make a living doing this. But prayerfully consider, the show is you're never charged to watch this or to listen to it on all of the major podcast platforms. DougBillings.us, monthly recurring donation. Prayerfully, please think about it. All right, lots to think about. Enjoy your weekend. Take care of each other out there, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you next week right here. Believe it, for the Republic. Cheers.